The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty surface of Kepler 442c. This small moon orbited a gas giant so far from its star that most people called it worthless. But Kim Tae-ho did not think it was worthless. He had been farming here for 12 years now. Every morning he walked the same path from his small metal house to check his atmospheric processors and water pumps. Tae-ho was a simple man. He wore faded blue work clothes and heavy boots that crunched on the rocky ground. His hands were rough from years of working with soil and machines. His face was weathered but kind. At 42 years old, he had spent most of his adult life trying to make this dead moon into something green and alive. The other humans in the small colony thought he was crazy. They mined rare metals or ran shipping stations. They made quick money and planned to leave. But Tae-ho wanted to stay. This place felt like home to him, even though the air was thin and the soil was poor. As he walked toward his largest greenhouse, Tae-ho noticed something strange. His moisture sensors were beeping in an odd pattern. These machines measured water in the air and soil. They helped him know where to plant and when to water. But today, they showed readings he had never seen before. The sensors pointed toward the big mountain that dominated the southern horizon. Local people called it Sleeping Peak. It was massive, stretching almost 10 kilometers across at its base. The mountain was covered in a thick layer of dust and rock debris. Strange plants grew on its slopes in scattered patches. Sometimes at night, people swore they could see a faint glow coming from deep inside the mountain. Tae-ho had always been curious about Sleeping Peak. The geological surveys said it was just an old volcanic formation, but something about it felt different. The way the wind moved around it was strange. Sometimes he thought he could hear very slow, deep sounds coming from inside it. Like breathing, but so slow and quiet that most people would miss it completely. Today, the moisture readings were stronger than ever. His sensors showed massive amounts of water vapor coming from the mountain. This made no sense. The official report said Sleeping Peak was solid rock. There should not be any water sources inside it. Tae-ho decided to investigate. He loaded his small hover truck with water containers, soil testing equipment, and his lunch. The drive to the mountain took 2 hours across rough terrain. As he got closer, the moisture readings grew stronger and stronger. When he finally reached the base of Sleeping Peak, Tae-ho stopped his truck and stared up in wonder. The mountain was even bigger than it looked from his farm. The surface was covered in centuries of dust, but underneath he could see strange patterns. They looked almost like scales, but scales bigger than dinner plates. He walked closer and placed his hand on what he thought was rock. The surface was warm, not hot like sun-heated stone, but warm like something alive. As he pressed his palm against it, he could swear he felt a very slow, steady pulse underneath. Tae-ho stepped back and looked at the mountain with new eyes. The shape was not quite right for a natural formation. It was too smooth in some places, too angular in others. And those patterns that looked like scales, they were too regular, too purposeful to be natural rock formations. A crazy idea began to form in his mind. What if this was not a mountain at all? What if it was something else? Something sleeping? He walked around the base of the formation, looking for any signs that might confirm his wild theory. Near what might have been the front of the shape, he found something that made his heart skip a beat. 2 massive depressions in the ground, each one perfectly oval and about 50 meters across. They looked exactly like closed eyes. Between these depressions, there was a long ridge that could have been a nose or snout. The dust and debris were thicker here, as if they had been accumulating for thousands of years. But underneath, Tae-ho could see hints of something that definitely was not rock. He knelt down and carefully brushed away some of the dust. What he uncovered made him gasp. Beneath the grime was something that looked like a scale, but it was beautiful beyond description. It seemed to have its own inner light, a soft blue-green glow that pulsed very slowly. The scale was smooth as glass but strong as metal. Tae-ho sat back on his heels and tried to process what he was seeing. If his crazy theory was right, then Sleeping Peak was not a mountain at all. It was a creature. A massive, ancient creature that had been sleeping here for so long that dust and debris had covered it completely. The local people had been walking past a sleeping dragon for generations and never knew it. But why was it here? Why was it sleeping? And why did it seem so neglected and forgotten? As if responding to his thoughts, one of the great closed eyes seemed to twitch slightly. Just the tiniest movement, but enough to make Taiho hold his breath. For a moment he thought he saw a thin line of brilliant light, as if the eye was trying to open just a crack. Then everything was still again. The only sounds were the wind blowing across the dusty surface and the distant hum of his hover truck. Taiho looked at this magnificent creature that had been abandoned and forgotten. Dust covered every inch of it. No one had cared for it or even noticed what it really was. It seemed so lonely lying here all by itself for who knows how long. Without really thinking about it, Taiho made a decision. He could not just walk away and pretend he had not seen this. This beautiful creature deserved better than to be covered in dirt and ignored by the world. He walked back to his truck and gathered his water containers and cleaning supplies. Then he returned to the spot where he had uncovered the single scale. Carefully, gently, he began to pour clean water over the dusty surface and brush away the accumulated grime. It was going to be a very big job. For 3 days, Taiho worked on cleaning just one small section of the sleeping dragon. The dirt and dust were packed so thick that he had to use warm water to soften it first. Then he would scrub gently with soft brushes meant for washing delicate equipment. Each scale he uncovered was like finding a hidden jewel. The dragon's scales were incredible to see. They shimmered with colors that changed as the light moved across them. Deep blue mixed with green and silver. Some scales pulsed with a soft inner glow that got brighter when Taiho touched them gently. It was as if the creature could feel his careful cleaning and was responding to his kindness. On the 4th day, Taiho brought bigger equipment from his farm. He connected his water pumps and brought his sonic cleaners. These machines used sound, waves to remove dirt without scratching delicate surfaces. He used them on his most precious crops, and now he would use them to help this magnificent being. As he worked, Taiho talked to the dragon. He spoke in Korean, the language his grandmother had taught him long ago. He told stories about his farm and his plants. He talked about his wife Sujin, who had died 5 years ago from a sickness the doctors could not cure. He shared his dream of making this dead moon green and full of life again. "You know," Taiho said, as he cleaned around what looked like the dragon's ear, "I think you and I want the same thing. We both want to bring life to places where others see only emptiness." Sometimes while he worked, Taiho could swear that the dragon was listening. The great eye closest to him would flutter slightly, as if trying to open. The breathing became more steady and peaceful. Once, when he was cleaning near the dragon's face, he felt warm air blow gently against his back. The other colonists thought Taiho had lost his mind. They would drive out to watch him work and shake their heads. "Crazy farmer," said Lee Min-soo, who ran the mining operation. "Talking to rocks and wasting water on a mountain." "It is not a mountain," Taiho replied calmly. "And she is not a rock." "She," Min-soo laughed. "Now the mountain is a woman. You need to get off this moon and find yourself a real woman, Taiho." But Taiho ignored their jokes and comments. He knew what he was seeing. Every day more of the dragon's beautiful body was revealed. Her scales formed patterns that looked like flowing water or wind through trees. Her face, as he slowly uncovered it, was noble and wise. Even sleeping, she looked like something that had seen the birth and death of stars. After 2 weeks of work, something wonderful happened. As Taiho was cleaning near the dragon's chest, he felt a stronger pulse underneath his hands. The inner light of the scales grew brighter, and then for just a moment one massive eye opened halfway. The eye was like looking into deep space. It held the blue of distant nebulas and the silver of starlight. For a few seconds, that ancient gaze focused on Taiho. He felt no fear, only a sense of incredible sadness. The dragon was lonely. She had been alone for so long that loneliness had become part of her being. Then the eye closed again, but Taiho knew she had seen him. She knew someone cared enough to help her. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, events were happening that would soon affect this quiet moon. The Zephyrian Empire was on the move again. Their war fleets, painted in dark red and black, were gathering at the edge of known space. Admiral Kexvor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Blade. He was a tall creature with gray skin and yellow eyes that never showed mercy. His people had been conquerors for 1,000 years. They believed that might made right and that weak civilizations deserved to be enslaved. Commander Rixnall, the admiral said to his second-in-command. What is the status of our Outer Rim campaign? Rixnall, a smaller but equally cruel Zephyrian, consulted his battle reports. The border worlds are falling faster than expected, sir. The Galactic Alliance military is weak and scattered. They have grown soft during the long peace. Good. Admiral Kexvor smiled, showing sharp teeth. For too long, the galaxy has known peace. Peace makes people forget the true nature of existence. Only through conquest do we become strong. The Zephyrian fleets began moving toward the inner systems. Their target was not just territory, but the complete destruction of the Galactic Alliance. They wanted to rule over all intelligent life in the galaxy. Back on Kepler 442c, Tejo continued his patient work. He had now cleaned about 1/10 of the dragon's massive body. Each day brought new wonders as more of her beauty was revealed. He found scales that looked like captured moonlight, and others that held the deep green of old forests. But the most amazing discovery came in the 3rd week. As he was cleaning near what he thought might be the dragon's heart, all the scales in that area began to glow more brightly. The pulsing became stronger and more regular. And then Tejo heard something that made him stop working and listen, carefully. It was a voice, so deep and quiet that it was more felt than heard. Like thunder from very far away, or the sound of wind through a vast canyon. Kind one, the voice whispered. Why do you wake me from my long sleep? Tejo sat back, on his heels, and looked up at the massive face that was still mostly covered in dust and debris. Because, he said simply, no one should have to sleep alone in the dirt forever. Everyone deserves kindness. The dragon's breathing became deeper and more steady. The glow from her scales spread slowly across her entire body like a gentle wave of light. She was beginning to truly wake up. 3 months had passed since Tejo first discovered the sleeping dragon. Now almost half of her magnificent body was clean and gleaming. Every morning he would arrive with fresh water and cleaning supplies. Every evening he would sit beside her great head and talk about his day. The dragon had been speaking to him more often now. Her voice was like distant thunder, but gentle and warm. She told him her name was Hanasol, which meant flower of the sun in the old language of her people. She had been sleeping for over 3,000 years. Why did you sleep so long? Tejo asked one evening as he cleaned dust from the scales around her eyes. Hanasol was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice carried deep sadness. I was the protector of this galaxy once. When the great wars ended and peace came, the people no longer needed me. They forgot about me. They stopped visiting or bringing offerings. Slowly, I felt more and more alone. Tejo stopped his cleaning and looked up at her massive face. What kind of wars? The darkness wars, Hanasol said. Evil beings from outside our galaxy came to destroy all life. For 100 years I fought them. I traveled between stars, breathing fire that could melt entire fleets. I protected millions of worlds and trillions of lives. You were a hero, Tejo said simply. Heroes are remembered, Hanasol replied. I was forgotten. When peace finally came, the people celebrated. They built monuments to their brave soldiers and wise leaders. But dragons were seen as creatures of war. In peacetime, no one wanted reminders of violence and destruction. Tejo continued cleaning while he thought about this. That was not fair to you? No, Hanasol agreed. But I understood. People wanted to forget the bad times. So I came to this distant moon to sleep until I was needed again. I thought someone would come for me when danger returned. But years became decades, and decades became centuries. Eventually, I fell into the deep sleep of despair. But I found you, Tejo said. Yes, Hanasol's voice grew warmer. You found me, and you did not want anything from me. You did not ask me to fight or protect or destroy. You only wanted to help me. Why? Tejo considered the question carefully. My wife used to say that kindness is like water for growing things. If you do not give it freely, everything dies inside. You looked lonely and forgotten. Everyone deserves kindness, no matter how big or small they are. The great dragon was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, stronger. You have awakened something in me that I thought was dead forever, Kim Tejo. You have reminded me why I chose to protect life in the first place. That night, as Tejo walked back to his farm, he saw lights in the sky. Not the usual pattern of stars, but moving lights. Ships were arriving in the system. Many ships. The next morning brought terrible news. The emergency communication system crackled to life in every building on the moon. The voice of Captain Park, Boram from the Galactic Alliance Defense Force, filled the air. All citizens of Kepler 442c, this is an emergency broadcast. The Zephyrian Empire has broken through our outer defenses. Multiple worlds have fallen. Their main fleet is moving toward this sector. All civilian populations should prepare for immediate evacuation. Tejo ran to his hover truck and drove quickly to Hanasol. She was already awake when he arrived, her great eyes open and alert. Her entire body was glowing with an inner fire that he had never seen before. You feel it too, she said as he approached. Feel what? The disturbance in the cosmic flow, death and destruction approaching. The Zephyrians have returned. You know them. I fought their ancestors in the Darkness Wars. They are a people who believe that strength comes only from conquest. They enslave worlds and destroy anything beautiful that they cannot control. More ships appeared in the sky throughout the day. Some were Alliance military vessels, painted white and blue. But others were different. These ships were dark red and black with sharp edges and weapon ports that looked like hungry mouths. The Zephyrian fleet had arrived. By evening, the news was worse. The enemy had demanded complete surrender from all Alliance forces. Any resistance would result in the destruction of civilian populations. The Alliance commander was gathering his small force for what everyone knew would be a hopeless battle. Tejo sat beside Hanasol's great head as the sun set. The dragon's scales were glowing brighter than ever, pulsing with contained power. They will ask you to fight, Tejo said quietly. Yes, Hanasol replied. And part of me wants to. The fire in my heart burns bright when I think of protecting innocent people. But I am tired of being used as a weapon and then forgotten. What will you do? Hanasol lifted her massive head and looked at the dark ships in the sky. I do not know yet. For 3,000 years I have slept, thinking the galaxy no longer wanted me. But you showed me kindness without asking anything in return. You reminded me that there is still goodness in the universe worth protecting. I would never ask you to fight for people who forgot you, Tejo said. I know, Hanasol said. That is exactly why I might choose to fight. As if hearing her words, one of the Zephyrian ships broke away from the main fleet and began descending toward their moon. Its weapons were already charging, red light gathering at the tips of its guns. The dragon Hanasol rose to her full height for the first time in 3 millennia. She was beautiful and terrible, her scales blazing with stellar fire. Her wings, now fully clean, spread wide enough to cast shadows over Tejo's entire farm. Stay back, kind farmer, she said, her voice now carrying the power of solar winds. Let me remember what I was made to do. The Zephyrian attack ship descended through the thin atmosphere like a falling star of death. Admiral Kex Vor watched from his flagship as Commander Rixnall led the advance force toward the farming moon. This should be easy prey. A few human, colonists and some agricultural equipment. Nothing that could threaten the mighty Zephyrian Empire. Sir, reported the communications officer on the Crimson Blade. Commander Rixnall is requesting permission to begin surface bombardment. Granted, Admiral Kex Vor said with a cruel smile. But tell him to leave some survivors. I want prisoners to question about Alliance defense positions. On the surface, Tejo watched the attack ship grow larger in the sky. Its weapons were glowing red-hot, ready to rain destruction on his home. Around the moon, other colonists were running to their ships trying to escape before the attack began. But Teho did not run. He stood beside Hanasol as she stretched her great wings and tested her muscles for the first time in millennia. Her body was magnificent, covered in scales that reflected the light of distant stars. She was easily 300 meters long, from nose to tail, with wings that could blot out the sun. "You do not have to fight for them," Teho said as the attack ship came closer. "They forgot you. They left you to sleep alone in the dust." Hanasol turned her great head to look at him. Her eyes burned with inner fire, but her voice was gentle. "I am not fighting for them, dear friend. I am fighting beside you. There is a difference." The attack ship opened fire. Beams of red energy lanced down toward Teho's farm, ready to burn everything he had worked 12 years to build. But the beams never reached the ground. Hanasol moved faster than lightning, her great body flowing through the air like liquid starlight. Her wings created a shield of energy that absorbed the weapon's fire completely. Commander Rixnal stared in shock from his bridge. "What is that thing? Sensors are reading energy levels off the scale." "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "our primary cannons had no effect. The creature absorbed the energy completely. Impossible, increase power and fire again." But Hanasol was no longer playing defense. She opened her great mouth and breathed. Not fire, as Teho had expected, but something far more beautiful and terrible. Pure stellar energy flowed from her throat, the same power that lit the hearts of stars. The beam struck the attack ship's shields and simply passed through them as if they were made of paper. The ship's engines died instantly. Its weapons went dark. But Hanasol had been very careful. She had disabled the vessel without destroying. Yet the ship made an emergency landing in the rocky plains beyond Teho's farm. "Incredible," Teho whispered. "I have had 3,000 years to learn control," Hanasol said. "Destruction is easy. Precise protection is much harder." On his flagship, Admiral Kexvor was no longer smiling. "What happened to Rixnal's ship?" "Sir, all systems appear to be disabled but intact. The crew is alive but stranded." "And what disabled them?" The sensor officer's voice was shaking. "Sir, it appears to be some kind of large creature, possibly a dragon of the old legends." Admiral Kexvor laughed harshly. "Dragons are myths, stories told to frighten children. Ready the main battle fleet for planetary bombardment. If these humans have some new kind of weapon, we will simply destroy everything from orbit." But word of the dragon's appearance was already spreading through both fleets. The Alliance ships that had been preparing for a hopeless last stand suddenly had hope again. The Zephyrian crews, who had expected easy victory, were now afraid. On the moon's surface, Teho watched as more ships moved into attack positions high above. "There are too many of them," he said. "Numbers do not matter," Hanasol replied calmly. "I have faced entire fleets before. But that was long ago. You have been sleeping for 3,000 years." Hanasol spread her wings wide and rose into the air, her body blazing with power. "Some things are never forgotten even in the deepest sleep. The fire in my heart burns as bright as ever." She flew toward the Zephyrian fleet, moving through space as easily as a fish swims through water. Dragons did not need ships to travel between stars. Her body was her vessel, powered by the same forces that moved planets in their orbits. Admiral Kexvor watched in growing fear as the dragon approached his fleet. She was alone against 200 ships, but something in the way she moved made his experienced warrior's instincts scream danger. "All ships," he commanded. "Focus fire on the creature. Maximum power." The entire Zephyrian fleet opened fire at once. Hundreds of energy beams and missile streams converged on Hanasol's position. The barrage was bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. Surely nothing could survive such concentrated firepower. But when the light faded, Hanasol was still there, completely unharmed. Her scales had absorbed every shot and were now glowing like a miniature sun. "Your weapons feed my power." Her voice boomed across all communication frequencies. "I am Hanasol, guardian of the light, protector of the innocent. You have brought death to a peaceful world. This ends now. What happened next would be remembered across the galaxy for 1,000 years. Hanasol did not destroy the Zephyrian fleet. Instead, she did something far more impressive. Moving faster than thought, she flew from ship to ship, using precise bursts of stellar energy to disable their engines and weapons. In less than 10 minutes, 200 warships were left floating helplessly in space. Not a single Zephyrian died, but their mighty fleet was completely powerless. Admiral Kexfor sat in stunned silence on his dead bridge. Emergency power provided only dim lighting. His weapons were cold metal. His engines were silent. "Sir," whispered his communications officer, "the creature is sending a message. Put it through." Hanasol's voice filled the bridge, calm and certain. "Admiral Kexvor of the Zephyrian Empire, your fleet is disabled, but your crews are safe. You have a choice. Leave this space immediately and never return, or face the full extent of my power. Choose wisely." The Admiral looked around his darkened bridge at his terrified crew. He was a proud warrior who had never retreated in his life. But he was not a fool. This dragon had defeated his entire fleet without killing anyone. That showed restraint and incredible power. If she chose to stop being merciful, "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "We are withdrawing." High above the farming moon, Hanasol watched the defeated Zephyrian ships limp away into deep space. She had won, but she felt no joy in victory. Fighting reminded her too much of the old days when she was used as a weapon and then forgotten. She returned to Taiho, landing gently beside his farm. The human was waiting for her with a soft smile and a bucket of clean water. "Your scales are dusty from flying through space," he said simply. Hanasol looked at this amazing human who treated her like a friend instead of a weapon. "You are not going to ask me about the battle?" "I saw what I needed to see," Taiho replied, beginning to gently clean her scales. "You protected everyone without becoming a killer. That takes more strength than destruction ever could." News of Hanasol's victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, people who had forgotten the old legends suddenly remembered stories their grandparents used to tell. The great dragons who once protected the galaxy had returned, but Admiral Kexvor was not finished. His pride was wounded and his fleet was damaged, but he still commanded the largest military force in the Outer Rim. He gathered the surviving Zephyrian ships at a secret base beyond the edge of Alliance space and called for reinforcements. "That creature humiliated us," he told his assembled captains. "No one defeats the Zephyrian Empire and lives to boast about it." Commander Rixnal, who had escaped from his crashed ship, stood at the Admiral's side. "Sir, our intelligence report suggests the dragon has been sleeping on that moon for thousands of years. Perhaps we can use that information." "How?" "Dragons are creatures of honor and attachment," Rixnal explained. "The old legends say they form deep bonds with those who show them kindness. If we threaten what the dragon cares about, we can force it to fight on our terms." Admiral Kexfor smiled coldly. "You mean the human farmer who has been cleaning it?" "Exactly. We take him prisoner and demand the dragon surrender in exchange for his life." On Kepler 442c, Taiho continued his daily routine of caring for Hanasol, but now they were no longer alone. Alliance officials had arrived to meet the legendary dragon. Ships from across the galaxy brought diplomats and military leaders who wanted to speak with her. Ambassador Yuki Min was the first to arrive. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but her voice carried the authority of the Galactic Senate. "Great Hanasol," she said, bowing deeply. "On behalf of the Alliance, I come to thank you for saving our people and to ask for your help in these dark times." Hanasol, who was resting beside Taiho's greenhouse, opened one great eye. "You thank me now. Where were you for the past 3,000 years? The Alliance made a terrible mistake," Ambassador Yuki Min admitted. "We forgot our greatest protector. We grew comfortable in peace and ignored those who made that peace possible. We are here to make amends." "Words are easy," Hanasol replied. "Actions matter more." General Park Boram, commander of the local Alliance fleet, stepped forward. "The Zephyrians have called for massive reinforcements. Our intelligence suggests they are planning something big. We need your help to stop them. Hanasol lifted her great head and looked at both officials. You want me to be your weapon again, to fight your battles and solve your problems. We want you to help us protect innocent people, Ambassador Yukimin said carefully. And when the fighting is done, will you remember me then, or will I be forgotten again until the next crisis? The ambassador had no answer for that. Her silence spoke louder than any words could have. Taeho, who had been quietly tending his plants while the officials talked, finally spoke up. Hanasol does not belong to the Alliance or anyone else. She is free to choose her own path. But surely she understands the greater good, General Park Boram said impatiently. Millions of lives are at stake. The greater good, Hanasol's voice rumbled with old anger. How many times have I heard those words? Fight for the greater good, kill for the greater good, sacrifice everything for the greater good. And when the greater good was achieved, I was sent away because dragons reminded people of ugly times. She rose to her full height, her scales blazing with inner fire. The officials stepped back nervously. If I fight again, it will not be for your alliance or your greater good. It will be for my friend Taeho and others like him who show kindness without expecting anything in return. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring from the Alliance ships in orbit. The long-range sensors had detected something terrible. Approaching the system. Sir, came a frantic voice over General Park Boram's communicator. We have incoming ships. Massive Zephyrian fleet, at least 500 vessels. They will arrive in 6 hours. 500 ships, the general whispered. That's twice what they had before. Admiral Kexvor had indeed called every favor and gathered every ally he could find. This time there would be no mercy and no retreat. The dragon would die, and the human who had dared to help it would suffer slowly. As the Alliance officials rushed back to their ships to prepare defenses, Taeho remained with Hanasol. The dragon was staring up at the stars, her eyes reflecting ancient sadness. You do not have to fight them, Taeho said quietly. We could leave this place, find somewhere peaceful where no one would bother us. Run away? Hanasol asked. Sometimes, running away is the wisest choice. Hanasol lowered her great head until it was level with Taeho's face. You would give up your farm, your home, your dreams of making this moon green just to keep me safe. Yes, Taeho said without hesitation. Some things are more important than dreams. The dragon was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was filled with wonder. 3,000 years ago, people would have demanded that I stay and fight. They would have said it was my duty, my purpose. But you offered to give up everything just to protect me. Friends protect each other, Taeho said simply. Yes, Hanasol said, her scales beginning to glow brighter. Friends protect each other, and I will not let anyone hurt my friend. She spread her mighty wings and rose into the air. But this time she did not fly toward the approaching enemy fleet. Instead, she began to sing. It was not a sound that human ears could properly hear. It was deeper than sound, older than music. It was the song that dragons sang to call their kin across the vast distances between stars. For 3 hours, Hanasol sang her ancient song. Taeho sat below her, feeling the vibrations through his bones, watching her scales pulse with rhythm and light. And then, one by one, lights appeared in the sky. They came from every direction. Dragons who had been sleeping on distant worlds, awakened by Hanasol's call. Dragons who had hidden themselves away from a galaxy that no longer wanted them. They came because one of their own was in danger, and because her song carried a message of hope. The message was simple. They were not alone anymore. They were remembered. They were loved. When Admiral Kexvor's fleet arrived at the edge of the system, they found not one dragon waiting for them, but 50. The great creatures filled the space around Kepler 442c like living constellations, their scales shining with the light of stars. Sir, whispered Kexvor's sensor officer, I am reading energy signatures that our instruments cannot measure. These creatures, they are beyond our understanding. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Kexvor felt true fear. He had come to destroy one dragon. Instead, he faced an army of legends made real. Hanasol's voice echoed across every communication channel in both fleets. "Leave now, Admiral Kexvor. This is your final warning." The admiral looked at his massive fleet, then at the dragons arrayed against him. His ships outnumbered them 10-1, but numbers meant nothing when facing creatures that could travel between stars and breathe the fire of suns. "All ships," he commanded, his voice shaking with rage and fear. "Attack formation. If we are to die, we die fighting." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. But it was not the slaughter that Admiral Kexvor expected. The battle between 50 dragons and 500 Zephyrian ships lasted exactly 17 minutes. But it was not the kind of battle that Admiral Kexvor had expected. The dragons did not attack with fury and destruction. Instead, they moved, like dancers through space, their great bodies flowing between the enemy ships with impossible grace. They disabled weapons without destroying hulls. They stopped engines without killing crews. In 17 minutes, the most powerful fleet in Zephyrian history was rendered completely helpless. Not a single life was lost. Admiral Kexvor sat in his darkened command center, staring in disbelief at his powerless fleet. His weapons were cold, metal. His engines were silent. Around him, his crew looked at their instruments with confused faces. "Sir," his communications officer reported quietly, "the dragons are sending a message." Hanasol's voice filled every ship in both fleets, calm and patient as always. "People of the Zephyrian Empire, for 1,000 years you have believed that strength comes from conquest and destruction. Today you have learned a different truth. Real strength comes from protection and creation." On the bridge of the Alliance flagship, Ambassador Yuki Min and General Park Boram watched in amazement as the dragons positioned themselves around the disabled Zephyrian vessels. The great creatures were not threatening the enemy ships. They were protecting them from debris and radiation damage. "I do not understand," General Park Boram said. "Why are they helping the people who came to destroy us?" "Because," came Teho's voice over the communication system, "that is what friends do. They help everyone, even their enemies." The human farmer was speaking from the surface of the moon, where he stood beside his greenhouse watching the scene unfold in space above. Hanasol continued her message to the Zephyrian fleet. "Admiral Kexvor, you came here seeking to destroy one human farmer because he showed kindness to a forgotten dragon. Instead, you have witnessed something your people have never seen: mercy for those who do not deserve it." In his command center, Admiral Kexvor felt something crack inside his chest. For his entire life, he had believed that the universe was a place of endless conflict where only the strong survived. But these dragons could have destroyed his fleet in seconds. Instead, they had chosen to preserve every life, even the lives of their enemies. "Why?" he whispered, not realizing his communication system was still open. "Because every life has value," Hanasol replied gently. "Even yours, Admiral." Over the following days, something unprecedented happened in galactic history. The Zephyrian fleet, stranded but unharmed, found themselves being cared for by the very dragons they had come to fight. The great creatures used their power to provide energy for life support systems and clean water for drinking. Slowly, carefully, Zephyrian crew members began talking with Alliance personnel. Many of them had never experienced kindness from their enemies before. They had been taught that other species were weak and deserved to be conquered. But the reality was different from everything they had been told. Commander Rixnall was the first Zephyrian officer to request a meeting with the dragons. He came down to the moon's surface in a small shuttle, his hands empty of weapons. "Great Hanasol," he said, kneeling before the dragon. "I do not understand what happened up there. You could have killed us all, but you chose not to. Why?" "Because killing is easy," Hanasol replied. "Changing minds and hearts is much harder, but also much more valuable. I have been a soldier all my life. I have conquered dozens of worlds, but I have never seen anything like what you did today." "What did I do?" You showed us that we were wrong. About everything. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, news of the dragon's return was changing everything. On worlds where the Alliance had been preparing for invasion, people were celebrating. But more importantly, they were remembering. Old stories were being retold. Ancient songs were being sung again. The dragons had not just defeated an enemy, fleet. They had reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten. That true strength comes from protecting others, not dominating them. Ambassador Yuki Min met with Hana Sol in the peaceful garden that Tai Ho had built around his greenhouse. The dragon was smaller now, having shifted her size to better fit among the growing plants. The Galaxy Senate wants to offer you and your fellow dragons formal positions in the Alliance Defense Force, the ambassador said. No, Hana Sol replied without hesitation. But surely you want some kind of recognition for what you have done. We want to be remembered, not used, Hana Sol said. There is a difference. Tai Ho, who was watering his tomato plants nearby, looked up from his work. What would you like instead? Hana Sol considered the question carefully. I would like to help you make this moon green and alive. I would like to teach young dragons how to nurture life instead of just protecting it. I would like to build something beautiful with a friend who asks for nothing except kindness. That sounds perfect, Tai Ho said with a smile. 6 months later, Kepler 442c was no longer a dusty, barren moon. Under the combined efforts of human technology and dragon power, the surface bloomed with life. Forests grew where there had been only rock. Rivers flowed where there had been only dust. Other humans came to learn Tai Ho's methods of farming. Other dragons came to learn Hana Sol's techniques of nurturing growth. The moon became a place where two very different species worked together to create something neither could have achieved alone. Admiral Kex Vor also remained in the system. His fleet had been repaired by Alliance engineers, but instead of leaving, he asked permission to establish a Zephyrian colony on a nearby asteroid. His people wanted to learn these new ways of thinking about strength and purpose. We spent 1,000 years trying to conquer the galaxy, he told Tai Ho during one of their conversations. But you showed us something better. You showed us how to grow it instead. The changes spread throughout the galaxy like ripples in a pond. The Zephyrian Empire began transforming from a conquering force into a federation of cooperative worlds. The Alliance reformed its government to better honor those who protected it, ensuring that heroes like the dragons would never be forgotten again. But the most important change happened in a small greenhouse on a distant moon, where a human farmer and an ancient dragon worked side by side, planting seeds and sharing stories. Do you ever regret sleeping for so long? Tai Ho asked one evening as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. No, Hana Sol replied, her scales reflecting the light like captured starfire. I needed to sleep so that I could wake up to find you. Some things are worth waiting 3,000 years for. Like friendship. Like friendship, the dragon agreed. And like learning that the greatest power in the universe is not the ability to destroy, but the choice to create. Above them, other dragons played in the evening sky, their young ones learning to fly among the clouds that now brought rain to the growing world below. In the distance, Zephyrian and Alliance children played together in gardens that dragons had helped to grow. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. True strength did not come from conquest or even protection. It came from the simple act of caring for others without expecting anything in return. It came from the kind of love that could wake ancient dragons from their sleep and turn enemies into friends. And it all began with one human farmer who saw a lonely creature covered in dust and decided that everyone deserved kindness. The end.